They say a father's proudest moment is when he walks his daughter down the aisle. I believe that too, until that moment turned into a nightmare I can't forget. The ballroom glittered with golden chandeliers, laughter, and the faint scent of roses. I stood there, glass in hand, ready to make my toast. My daughter, Emily, sat beside her new husband, Ryan, the man I had trusted with her heart. My heart swelled as I looked at her in that white dress. She looked just like her mother on our wedding day. The same nervous smile, the same trembling hands. I raised my glass. To my daughter, I began, my voice shaking slightly. You'll always be my little girl, even when life changes everything around us. And to Ryan, take care of her, love her, and never forget what it means to earn a father's respect. There was polite laughter, a few claps. For a second, everything felt perfect. Then Ryan stood up. He walked over to me, smiling too wide, that fake kind of grin people wear when they're about to do something stupid. "Mr. Parker," he said, loud enough for the entire room to hear. "You've said some wise words. But weddings are about fun, right?" Before I could respond, he grabbed the wedding cake knife and cut a massive slice. Everyone started cheering. They thought it was part of the act. Then, with one quick motion, he shoved the entire thing into my face. The crowd erupted in laughter. My daughter gasped, then laughed too, and I just stood there, frosting dripping down my face, my glasses smeared, my dignity melting under the weight of mockery. Ryan patted my shoulder. "Relax, old man. Just a joke." But his eyes said something else. Pure spite. I forced a smile, tried to laugh it off. The guests clapped, thinking it was harmless fun. But deep inside, something shattered. As I excused myself to the restroom, I heard Ryan whisper to one of his groomsmen, "That's for calling me poor." That's when it hit me. This wasn't a joke. It was revenge. I washed my face in the sink, cold water running over my trembling hands. I stared into the mirror at a man covered in cake and shame. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a father. I felt like prey. As I left the hall, one thought burned in my mind like a slow fire. He just started something he'll never finish. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Tell me in the comments. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw frosting laughter in my daughter's face, the way she smiled while I stood there humiliated. The next morning, sunlight poured through my kitchen window, but it couldn't touch the cold inside me. I sat there staring at the empty chair across from me, the one where my wife used to sit before she passed away 3 years ago. She would have known what to say. She always did. I walked over to the mirror in the hallway. My reflection looked like a stranger, tired eyes, clenched jaw, regret written across every wrinkle. "You should have said something," I whispered to myself. "You should have stopped him." But what good would that have done? Ryan was now family. He had money, charm, influence. And me? Just a middle-aged man trying to hold on to what little family he had left. I sat down at my desk and opened my phone. Dozens of wedding photos were already online. The one that went viral, of course, was me, face covered in cake. The caption read, "Father the bride gets a sweet surprise, faced with tears of joy, faced with tears of joy, faced with tears of joy." The comments made my stomach twist. He deserved it. Looks like the groom's got a sense of humor. That dad's face priceless. I slammed the phone down. That's when I noticed a new message notification from my late wife's lawyer, Mr. Jennings. "Mr. Parker, we still need your confirmation for the trust fund release. Your daughter and her husband have been inquiring." My heart froze. The trust fund, the inheritance my wife left for Emily, $500,000. And the only person who could authorize its release was me. I scrolled further down the email and saw the date. They had contacted him 2 weeks before the wedding. So that's why Ryan was being so polite, so generous, so charming. And when I delayed the signature, he decided to humiliate me, to teach me a lesson. I clenched my fists. So that's who Ryan really was, a greedy boy playing the role of a loving husband. For hours, I sat in silence, the truth burning in my chest. I could almost hear my wife's voice whispering, Don't let him take what we built. When evening fell, I made a decision. If Ryan wanted to play games, I'd play too. But unlike him, I knew how to finish them. Don't forget to subscribe if you're following this story so far. The next part is where things begin to change. The next morning, I drove to Mr. Jennings' law office, the same lawyer who handled my late wife's estate. He was a good man, older than me, with a kind of quiet tone that carried both wisdom and warning. "Mr. Parker," he said, motioning for me to sit. "I was just about to call you. There have been some developments regarding your wife's trust." I frowned. "Developments?" He adjusted his glasses. "Your daughter's husband, Ryan, has been reaching out repeatedly. He wants the funds released immediately. Said you gave him verbal consent." I froze. "I what?" Jennings sighed. "He's persuasive. Sent over a few documents. 2. But I didn't act on them. Your wife's will clearly states the funds can only be transferred after your written approval." I exhaled slowly, relief mixing with anger. "So he tried to bypass me." Jennings nodded. "Exactly. That's why I needed to see you before anything happens." As I left his office, I couldn't stop thinking about how calculated it all was. Ryan didn't just marry my daughter for love. He married her for money. My wife's money. And I was standing in the way. That night, I called Emily. She answered after a few rings, her voice tired. "Dad, can we not talk about the wedding again? Ryan already feels awful." "Emily," I said quietly, "have you been talking to Mr. Jennings about your mom's trust?" Silence. Then a hesitant, "Yeah, Ryan said it would help us start fresh. You know, buy a house, open his business." I closed my eyes. "Sweetheart, that money isn't supposed to be touched yet. Your mother wanted you to have it when you decide I'm ready," she interrupted, her tone sharp. "Dad, I'm not a child." Her words cut deep. For the first time, I heard my daughter not as my little girl, but as someone else, someone influenced, reshaped, maybe even manipulated. Before I could respond, Ryan's voice echoed faintly in the background. "Tell him to sign already, babe." That's when I hung up. I stood in the middle of my quiet living room, surrounded by framed memories, birthdays, vacations, Christmas mornings. All those smiles now meant nothing. I whispered to the photo of my wife, "You trusted me to protect her. I won't fail now." I walked to my old study, unlocked the drawer, and pulled out a small flash drive, one I'd used years ago when I ran a security firm. If Ryan wanted to play dirty, I'd dig until I found what he was hiding. And I had a feeling there was plenty. If you were in my place, would you warn your daughter or let the truth destroy her illusion? Tell me in the comments. I drove to their house the next morning, carrying a box of chocolates and a fake smile. Ryan opened the door, wearing a silk robe and an arrogant smirk that made my blood boil. "Well, look who decided to show up," he said. "Didn't think you want to see us after the dessert incident." I forced a laugh. "I figured I owed you both an apology. I overreacted. Weddings can make people tense." His eyes lit up. He believed it. He called out, "Babe, your dad's here." Emily appeared, hesitant but polite. "Hey, Dad." Her voice was soft again, the way it used to be. I handed her the chocolates and smiled. "Peace offering." We sat down in the living room. Ryan poured himself coffee, but didn't offer me any. "So," he said casually, "any news from your lawyer?" "Actually, yes," I said. "He told me everything's ready. Just a few signatures left." Ryan leaned forward, his grin returning. "That's great news. We can finally move on from all this tension." He thought he'd won. But while he laughed, I noticed something on the corner desk, his laptop. Still open. A spreadsheet flickered on the screen. I couldn't see the details, but I saw $signs and multiple names. As they chatted, I set my coffee cup down and accidentally knocked it over. "Oh, I'm so sorry," I said, grabbing tissues. I crouched down, subtly slipping the small flash drive from my pocket into the laptop side port. Click. It connected instantly. The transfer began in silence. Ryan sighed. "It's fine, Mr. Parker. You've done enough damage this week already." His words almost made me smile. If only he knew what damage was really coming. After 10 minutes, I stood up. I should go. I'll drop by with the sign forms tomorrow. Ryan smirked. Perfect. I knew you'd come around. Emily hugged me at the door, hesitant but warm. I'm glad you're not angry anymore, Dad. I smiled faintly. Angry? No, sweetheart. I'm just patient. As I walked back to my car, the late morning sun hit my face. It felt almost poetic, bright, calm, peaceful, the quiet before a storm only I could see coming. When I got home, I plugged the drive into my computer and began copying Ryan's files. Within minutes, a folder appeared. Inside were spreadsheets, contracts, and something worse, a list of clients. Ryan was an investor. He was running fake deals under different names, including Emily Parker. My hand tightened on the mouse. My heart pounded with a mix of rage and purpose. So that's why he needed that inheritance. He wasn't building a life. He was building a cover. I leaned back in my chair, the screen light glowing across my face. For the first time since the wedding, I smiled. Quietly, coldly. He thought the game had ended. He had no idea it had just begun. I stayed up all night going through the files. My small study was lit only by the glow of the computer screen. Each folder I opened peeled away another layer of Ryan's carefully crafted lie. Dozens of spreadsheets listed fake investment accounts, shell companies that didn't exist, but the names attached to them did. My daughter's name appeared on 5 different contracts, all with her forged signature. $85,000. Gone. I scrolled further, and a familiar address appeared. Our family home, the one my wife and I bought 30 years ago. Ryan had even listed it as collateral for one of his fake businesses. My pulse thundered in my ears. He wasn't just greedy, he was reckless. He was using Emily's name and my legacy to fund a fraud ring. For a long moment, I sat there staring at the screen, unable to breathe. Then, the rage turned into clarity. I had all the proof I needed, but I couldn't just expose him, not yet. If I moved too early, Emily would take his side, and I'd lose her completely. I needed him to trust me first, to believe I was weak. By morning, I had a plan. At noon, I called Ryan. Let's have dinner tomorrow, I said casually. We'll sign the trust papers together. I think it's time to move forward. There was a pause. Then his fake charm returned. Sounds great, Mr. Parker. I knew you'd come around. I smiled to myself. Yeah, I said softly. Me too. After the call, I transferred all the files to Secure Drive, then made a copy just in case. I reached out to an old friend from my security firm days, Daniel, now working in federal investigations. We hadn't spoken in years, but when I explained what I'd found, he didn't hesitate. Send me everything, he said, and stay quiet. You'll get your justice. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I sat in the dark, staring at my wedding photo, my wife's smile frozen in time. I wondered what she'd think if she saw what her daughter's husband had done. Probably what I was thinking now. He needs to pay. Low piano begins, slow, emotional undertone. Sometimes revenge doesn't come from anger. It comes from love. Twisted, heavy, desperate love that refuses to let the ones you care about be destroyed. Ryan thought he'd humiliated me in front of everyone. But soon, everyone would see who he really was. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, you know that silence is the sharpest weapon, and I was ready to use it. Don't forget to subscribe, because what happens next changes everything. The next day, I put on my nicest suit, the same one I wore at the wedding, and drove to their house for dinner. When Ryan opened the door, his smile was smug and triumphant. Well, look at you, he said. Ready to make things right? Absolutely, I said, forcing a grin. I figure it's time to let bygones be bygones. He led me inside. The house smelled like new paint and expensive champagne, probably things bought with Emily's forged trust funds. Emily looked relieved to see me. Dad, she said softly, I'm really happy you came. I'm happy too, I said, hugging her gently. It's time for a fresh start. Dinner was awkward. Ryan did most of the talking, bragging about the investments he was running, his plans to expand his real estate firm, and their upcoming honeymoon in Italy. I listened, nodding, pretending to be impressed. Every word that came out of his mouth was a lie, and I let him believe I bought every one of them. At one point, he raised his glass. "To family," he said with a smirk. "And forgiveness." I smiled back. "To both." After dinner, he pulled out the folder, the one he believed contained the trust fund transfer forms. "All you need to do is sign here, Mr. Parker," he said confidently. I took the pen, holding it between my fingers. "You're sure this will make things easier for everyone?" "Of course," he said quickly. "It's the right thing to do." I nodded slowly. "Then I'll do it tomorrow. At dinner. All of us together." He frowned. "Tomorrow? Why not now?" I leaned back, pretending to hesitate, because I want to do it properly. Dinner, family, closure. You'll get your signature. He smiled again, that same fake charm returning. I liked that, old-fashioned dramatic. He had no idea how dramatic tomorrow would be. As I stood to leave, I noticed his phone buzzing on the counter. For just a second, I saw the message preview light up the screen. "Funds transferred. Delete evidence ASAP." I turned away before he noticed I'd seen it. "Good night, Ryan," I said calmly. "You'll have what you want soon." "Good night, Mr. Parker." Outside, the night was cool, the sky painted with silver clouds. I took a deep breath. Tomorrow would be the day it all came crashing down. When I got home, I opened my laptop and attached every file, every screenshot, every forged signature, and every illegal transaction I'd found. I sent them all to Daniel with a simple message. "You said you'd handle it. Tomorrow's the night." Then I scheduled a second email, an anonymous tip to the Federal Fraud Division, with the same evidence set to send automatically in 24 hours. Before I shut the laptop, I stared at the reflection on the black screen. My own eyes looked colder than I remembered. Ryan thought I was a fool. He thought forgiveness was weakness. But tomorrow night, he'd learn. Forgiveness was just a quiet before judgment. The next evening, I arrived with a bottle of wine, the same brand we used to celebrate Emily's graduation. It was a small detail, but I wanted everything to feel nostalgic. I wanted them comfortable. Ryan greeted me with open arms, acting like we were best friends again. "Glad you came, Mr. Parker," he said loudly. "We've got your favorite roast lamb." I smiled politely. "You remembered." Emily looked radiant, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the tablecloth. Her laughter filled the room, and for a fleeting second, I wished this night wasn't about revenge. But then I remembered the humiliation, the laughter, the cake in my face, and my daughter's tears that followed when she realized a man she loved didn't love her the same way. We sat around the table, the air filled with fake warmth. Ryan poured everyone a glass of wine, his arrogance on full display. "To family," he said again, just like the night before. "To truth," I said softly, raising my glass. He chuckled. "Truth? That's an interesting toast." "Oh, you'll find it interesting," I said, looking right at him. Dinner went on as planned. Between small talk and forced smiles, I subtly checked my watch. 8:58 p.m. 2 minutes left until Daniel and his team were in position. At exactly 9, Ryan handed me the document folder again. "All right, old man," he said jokingly. "Time to make it official. Just sign right here." I picked up the pen and stared at the paper. "You know, Ryan," I said, voice calm but low, "I've always admired how confident you are." He grinned. "It's called being successful." "Successful," I repeated, opening the folder slowly. Funny word for someone who's about to lose everything. He froze. "What did you just say?" I pushed the folder across the table. "I didn't bring your documents tonight. I brought mine." From my coat, I pulled out a small USB and set it next to his plate. "Everything you've done. Every forged signature. Every fake company. Every transfer. All right there. Already sent to the Federal Bureau." Emily's face turned pale. "Dad, what are you talking about?" Ryan's fake smile vanished. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I said quietly. "Why don't you check your phone?" He reached into his pocket, and as his screen lit up, I watched the color drain from his face. He saw the incoming messages, federal alerts, freezing accounts and Daniel's agency tag. No, he muttered. You can't. You don't know what you've done. Oh, I know exactly what I've done, I said, standing slowly. You wanted my signature. Ryan. Instead, you got my justice. Emily gasped, tears brimming in her eyes. Ryan, is this true? He stammered. Emily, baby, it's not what it looks like, but before he could finish, there was a loud knock on the door. 3 sharp bangs. Ryan's hand shook. You called the cops? No, I said, walking toward the door. I called the truth. Daniel walked in, badge glinting under the light. Behind him, 2 officers stepped forward. Ryan Cole, Daniel said firmly, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. The room erupted. Emily screamed as Ryan tried to stand, but the officers were faster. They pulled his arms behind him as he shouted my name, cursing me. I didn't move. I just watched as the same man who'd smashed my face into a cake was now smashed against the dining table, his laughter gone. 5 minutes, I whispered to myself. That's all it took. When the door closed behind them, Emily turned to me, sobbing. Dad, why didn't you tell me? I looked at her, eyes soft but steady. Because you wouldn't have believed me. Sometimes, people have to see the truth fall apart before they understand who's really standing with them. That night, I drove home in silence. Revenge didn't feel sweet, it felt necessary. But deep down, I knew this story wasn't over yet. Because Ryan wasn't the kind of man who stayed quiet for long. It was 2:14 a.m. when my phone rang. The screen flashed with an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. There was a pause. Then, Ryan's voice hoarse, furious. You think this is over? He hissed. You think you can humiliate me like that? My grip tightened around the phone. You brought this on yourself. Oh no, old man, he growled. You just started something you can't finish. The line went dead. I sat there in the dark, the hum of the refrigerator, the only sound in the house. Ryan was behind bars, at least for now. But his tone, that wasn't a threat. It was a promise. The next morning, I called Daniel. He called me. I said, Daniel sighed. He's out on bail. Temporary. His lawyers move fast. My jaw clenched. How much time before he disappears? Not long. But don't worry. Edward. We're watching him. But I knew better. Ryan wasn't the type to run. He was the type to strike back. That evening, I found a note slipped under my door. No words. Just a photo. The same photo I kept on my desk. My wife, smiling on our wedding day. Except now, someone had drawn an X across her face. My blood ran cold. I looked out the window, but the street was empty. The quiet felt heavier than usual. He wanted me scared. He wanted me to break. But he didn't understand. I'd already lost too much to fear. I walked over to my safe, pulled out the files Daniel didn't have. Backups of every hidden deal, every offshore account. If Ryan wanted to play dirty again, I'd bury him completely this time. Emily called later that night, her voice trembling. Dad, Ryan's lawyers came by. They said you set him up. I sighed. Do you believe them? Silence. Then a whisper. I don't know what to believe anymore. I swallowed hard. Then believe this. I never stopped protecting you, Emily. Not for 1 second. When she hung up, I sat alone again, the ticking clock echoing in my ears. Revenge had cost me peace, but if it saved my daughter, it was a price worth paying. Soft thunder rumble. Rain starts in background. Outside, rain began to fall. I stood by the window, watching it streak down the glass like tears. Ryan thought this was about humiliation. He was wrong. This was about redemption. And if he came for me again, I'd be ready. Some scars don't fade. They just remind you who started the war. 3 weeks passed. The town had moved on, but my life hadn't. Every knock at the door, every ringing phone, I half expected it to be him. But Ryan was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that only comes before a storm. Emily had gone back to stay with her friend in Denver. I told her it was for safety, but truthfully, I needed distance. She still didn't know everything. Not about her mother's inheritance. not about the other secrets Ryan had dug up. Late one evening, I returned home from the grocery store. The porch light flickered, a bulb I'd replaced just yesterday. My gut tightened. When I opened the door, I noticed it instantly, a faint smell of smoke and cologne. His cologne. On my living room wall, written in red marker, were 4 words. You shouldn't have started. I froze. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. He'd been here, inside my home. I grabbed the phone, ready to call Daniel. But before I could dial, headlights flashed through the window. A car idled outside, a black Mercedes, tinted windows. I stepped closer, squinting through the blinds. Then the driver's window rolled down, and I saw him. Ryan. He raised his phone, smirked, and mouthed, "Round 2." The car sped off before I could react. I called Daniel immediately. He's here. He broke in. Daniel arrived within 20 minutes. 2 officers with him. They searched every corner, but the house was empty. He shook his head. He's taunting you, testing your reaction. He wants you angry again. I clenched my jaw. Then he's getting exactly what he wants. Daniel put a hand on my shoulder. Don't let him drag you down. He's desperate. Cornered animals do stupid things. But Daniel didn't know Ryan like I did. Ryan wasn't stupid. He was strategic. Later that night, I sat in my study staring at the folder of documents, the ones that could send him away for good. But I knew the courts couldn't stop him now. This wasn't about money anymore. This was personal. At midnight, my phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. It was a video. I pressed play. Emily, sitting in a chair, tied up, tears streaking her face. Ryan's voice in the background. You want to protect her, right? Let's see how far you'll go now. My entire body went cold. He'd crossed the line. There was no turning back now. If you were me, would you call the cops? Or would you finish it yourself? The next morning, I didn't wait for Daniel. I didn't call anyone. I packed a small bag, my wife's cross, a flashlight, and the one thing Ryan didn't know I had, the location tracker from his company car. He'd forgotten I'd once helped install it myself when he borrowed my garage. The signal led to an abandoned wedding venue on the outskirts of town, the same one where Emily had chosen her first cake tasting. Poetic, almost. When I arrived, the air was thick with dust and decay. I stepped through the broken door, flashlight beam cutting through darkness. Ryan! I shouted, my voice echoing. It's me you want, not her. A low laugh answered from the shadows. Finally, some fire in you, old man. I turned toward the sound, heart pounding. There he was, standing near the stage, the same spot where my daughter once tried on her dress. Emily sat a few feet away, tied to a chair but unharmed. Let her go, I said, voice steady. Ryan smirked. You humiliated me, Edward. You ruined my name, my life. All I wanted was what Emily deserved. You mean the money, I said. He laughed darkly. Money's just proof of power. You had it. I didn't. Now I'll take both. He raised a knife, not big, but enough. And for a moment, I saw the reflection of that wedding day. Him holding a cake knife, everyone laughing. But this time I didn't stand still. I lunged. The flashlight swung from my hand and hit the knife away. The struggle was brutal, desperate. He hit me across the face, shouting, You should have stayed out of this. We fell against the table, the same kind they use for receptions. It collapsed under us with crash. Dust filled the air, choking us both. I reached for the nearest object, a shard of broken glass. Ryan staggered up, grabbing a chair leg. You think you can beat me, old man? I didn't answer. I just moved. When he swung, I dodged. The chair smashed into the floor, splintering. I thrust the glass shard forward, stopping just an inch from his throat. He froze. Look around you, Ryan, I said, panting. Everything you touched, you destroyed. Emily's love, my wife's trust, even your own damn life. He glared, breathing hard. You're not brave. You're just old and bitter. I pressed the shard closer, my hand shaking. Then I saw Emily's face, terrified, begging me not to cross that line. And in that second, I dropped it, Ryan stared in disbelief. You don't have it in you. I stepped back. No, but the law does. Outside, flashing lights appeared, Daniel's voice echoing through the building. Ryan Cole, step away now. Ryan turned to run, but it was too late. The officers stormed in, pulling him to the ground. He screamed, cursing my name again. I walked to Emily, untying her ropes. She fell into my arms, crying uncontrollably. I'm so sorry, Dad, she whispered. I held her tight. No, sweetheart. I'm sorry you had to see what revenge really looks like. As Ryan was dragged away, he spat one last line over his shoulder. This isn't the end, Parker. I looked at him, eyes cold. It is for you. Outside, the dawn was breaking, soft light cutting through gray clouds. For the first time in months, I felt the weight begin to lift. Revenge didn't heal anything. It didn't bring peace. But it did bring balance. And as I watched the police cars fade down the road, I whispered to myself, 5 minutes of humiliation, a lifetime of payback. If you followed my story till now, tell me, was I right to do what I did, or did I go too far? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because every revenge has roots, and every root leaves a scar.